We move on to our next keynote speech, and now let's move on with AI for media business, countering disinformation from Viktoras Dauksas, head of debunkeu.org initiative. Viktoras has more than 13 years of experience in development of online technologies. A physicist by education, he is also a creative problem solver, helping organizations to tune internal processes and deliver outstanding platforms. Viktoras has worked on development of the most popular and successful e-services in the Baltic states. For the last 4 years, he is leading EU.org, an independent technology think tank that analyzes disinformation by combining expert knowledge with AI-driven technologies. With a round of your virtual applause, let's invite to our stage Viktoras Dauksas, head of DISINFORMATION initiative, with the keynote presentation, AI for Media Business, Countering Disinformation.
Good evening. Okay, let's start here. DISINFORMATION.org. So we're running currently analysis in 8 countries, 7 in Europe, one in United States as well. Currently, we do around 10 analyses per month. That's our current capacity. We are a small team. We are NGO and not-for-profit organization. So basically now we concentrate on 4 things. We run analysis on disinformation in multiple countries. We monitor disinformation during election and before election periods. We run a lot of trainings and disinformation analyst certification processes and carry some large-scale media literacy campaigns. So this presentation will be divided in some strategies that we take that we would call short-term and long-term. So everything starts with a methodology. Disinformation analysis has to be very structured, and when many people are working on it, it's really important to have a very kind of methodological approach that would be academically correct. And we have 5 professors working on the methodology, and we call this methodology as a 3-step analysis. And every time disinformation is analyzed, you need to focus and understand who is the source, so where this source is coming from, who is speaking there, what experts, what journalists working there, and so on. So everyone about all the information about the source. Then we are assessing the content pieces at a separate level. Every content piece is analyzed by real human analysts, assessed, and then the results are presented. If we take only the first few steps and we are not taking the third, which is the circumstances or the context, then that's how typically mistakes are made. And the analysis brings more value when it's done for a longer time period, because then we have more context and more evidence to prove how disinformation agents are actually behaving and how they are spreading these false and misleading information. Important to mention that we concentrate on disinformation and misinformation, and the main difference is the intent. If there is just a simple mistake, maybe a journalistic mistake, maybe just a speaker mistake or whatever, and then it was quickly fixed, so it's called misinformation, and that is typical. Life happens, people make mistakes, and if it's fixed, it's fixed. So there's not a big problem. But if the actors are behaving systematically to harm societies, harm democracies, create harm in the environments where we live in, so this is treated as disinformation with intent to harm someone or society. So information comes in huge amounts. So there's so much information in our digital space that we are now kind of even living in. And currently we analyze websites that are connected with multiple disinformation agents or authoritarian governments. We analyze Facebook, we analyze YouTube, we analyze Telegram, and there's a lot of data incoming. And before running anything with machines, you have to clean data. Without clean data, it's impossible to run any machine learning algorithms. Therefore, it is really a big part of our work to clean that data. And then only then we can run the predictions. All the predictions are just as a help or part of the process that is just partly automated to support human analysts who are then assessing and making the final decisions. Currently, and in near future, I don't see any possibility for AI fully decide if that is true or false, and you really need to add human review if you want to do a really good analysis. We call our AI vertical AI, and it's basically connected for our niche topic. It's only for disinformation analysis, and but it can work in many languages. Currently, we work in 30 languages. And there is two separate processes. First process is how to discover disinformation or potentially harmful content, and then how to support analysts in the analysis and automate some parts of the processes that they are doing manually, so we could improve their efficiency, and they can do faster analysis, but to keep the same nearly 100% precision. And that helps a lot. That saves a lot of time. Just imagine, currently we analyze around 3,000 websites that we mapped from before, and we kind of already have enough evidence that they are either connected or to authoritarian regimes or spreading disinformation, or this is typical job they do. But they would produce 2 or 3 million content pieces every month just in the websites, and then we add social media, YouTube, so there's a vast amounts of information to analyze, so it's quite difficult. Therefore, we need to think, how do we select what is actually worth to analyze? And basically, with our methodology, we focus on 2 things. How potentially harmful is the content from previous experience that we had before, that we analyzed, and how viral is the content. So virality, or the size of the accounts, or the size of the websites, helps to determine how important that story is and how much impact it can do. So connecting these things, we can score the content and then have the first results that it's worth the review by the human analysts, and then they analyze it, and that's how we get to disinformation cases that later we present. And each month we find at least 2,000-3,000 cases of mis and disinformation. So there will be a lot of QR codes. You can scan them. You will get directly to the reports, and you can later read them. Example of our work, so we did more than 20 reports on COVID disinformation in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Poland, in these 4 countries. And during 1.5 years, we discovered already more than 11,000 cases of mis and disinformation. So that is a lot. And it's not everything. We do not cover all the internet in these countries, but that's just a sample that we have analyzed. But 11,000 cases of disinformation, it's still quite a lot. And the impact is huge. During the first 6 months of this year, in what we call hostile media, so the media outlets, social media accounts, social media groups, and so on, that tend to spread disinformation systematically. So we discovered around 500,000 content pieces in these instances. And with our algorithms, we predicted 35,000 to be potentially most harmful ones. And every single of those 35,000 articles were reviewed by human analysts by our methodology. And in these content pieces, we discovered almost 9,300 cases of mis and disinformation. So that is quite a lot. With this kind of analysis, the hit rate to discover mis and disinformation was 26%. So that is not very high comparing to other analysis. So when analyzing this information, it's very topic dependent, and it depends a lot on the topic, how much disinformation you actually will find. With COVID, there's a lot of disinformation, but there's also a lot of content, and that's why it's much harder to find these disinformation cases, because they are more hidden just because there's more communications and articles and media about this issue. When the analysis is done, then we can automatically run all the charts. So we can see on monthly dynamics how many disinformation cases were found that month, which languages were most popular. And what is interesting that if we just analyzed by the number of content pieces, you would see that the top languages are either Russian or Polish, but by the number of content pieces. But if we go and measure what is the potential reach of these content pieces, how many people potentially consume those, then we see that English and Russian languages are dominant, and the third is the Polish language. So this is the languages where the disinformation brings the biggest effect. What is interesting finding that typically in a lot of different reports, it's communicated that a lot of the cases are misinformation. And with this report, we see that it's very different. So 90% of the cases that were found that were false and misleading, they are actually disinformation. They were spread and written and communicated with intent to harm, and there is no mistake in doing that. Those communicators, medias, and so on, so they were doing that systematically. They were spreading lies and doing this, and you can prove that over a longer time period. What else is interesting that by analyzing a longer period, you can see that by the number of content pieces, that the top narrative was that vaccines have been developed without rigorous testing. But when we measure the reach, so how many people potentially were reached with this content, we see that the main narrative that Kremlin or pro-Kremlin media have communicated was that superiority of COVID-made Russian vaccines. So that's the main sub-narrative that was actually communicated. And the second was that West seeks to discredit Russian and Chinese vaccines. So there was a huge influence operation run there. And with this narrative analysis, we can discover and present that. Currently, the most probably important topic is the hybrid attack against Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, and actually all EU is the crisis or disinformation and illegal migrant crisis that Lukashenko manufactured. And last week, when the Monday came and migrants started to move to the Polish border, during the first 4 days, there was 80 times more articles printed in known disinformation media sources. Just next week, and there is 18 times more content, so it kind of requires then much more analysis effort, but that's how important these disinformation outlets this topic is, and that's how these stories are manufactured and pushed forward. And if we analyze a longer period again, here we can see that on May 28, Lukashenko announced that he will flood the EU and Europe with the migrants and illegal trafficking and so on. And just 1 week later in Lithuania, we had already 400 illegal migrants who crossed the border. On July 1st, Mr. Lukashenko announced that he will provide 73 countries with kind of visa-free regime or visas that are very easily obtained, just paying the money and getting the visas, to the Middle East countries or African countries, and which are the countries from which migrants are actually coming. 1 month later, Lithuania already has more than 4,000 illegal migrants. It's a huge crisis. And that's the chain of events, how all of this is happening. And then August 1st, we have the first evidence when Frontex records from the helicopter how Belarusian border control with a car leads the migrants to Lithuanian border and shows where to cross it. Later, we see that the most important date was the August 17th, when Der Spiegel and Dossier Center published evidence with the documents that showed that Belarusian presidential office is actually involved in manufacturing this crisis. The organization under the presidential office, called Center Kurort, like a central tourist agency for the country, is managed directly by presidential office and was issuing visas for pregnant women, for children, issuing hunting visas next to Lithuanian border. And there are even more documents that prove how this was organized, how an Iraqi person was hired to run these operations from Minsk to Iraq. So knowing the context, it's much easier to understand. So the analysis of 6 weeks from September 1st till October 31st, we have discovered 4,400 content pieces communicated about the issue, about this crisis that was manufactured. And in this communication, we discover almost 1,500 cases of mis and disinformation that was misleading or actually false. And this analysis is run in 10 languages. What's interesting to measure here and see that the biggest proportion of false information actually is in Russian language and in the hostile media, which is typically either pro-Kremlin or Kremlin actually owned or connected with Minsk. So almost half of the content pieces actually there were false and misleading, so actual disinformation. When analyzing the communications on the migrants themselves in social media and the groups, there was, depending on the month and week, 10 to 20% of the cases of false and misleading content. So still quite a lot, but not that much as in the hostile media. So these disinformation or influence campaigns are constructed by Kremlin media, Minsk and Kremlin regime. So they are taking some of the content that actually is somewhere in the internet and just amplifying, or in some cases they build up these disinformation stories by themselves and push them over the media, and that's the actual disinformation and influence campaigns. That's how they are built. Now getting more to long-term strategies, and basically analysis helps to understand and collect evidence and proof what is happening right now, to provide the proof and then make the decisions and understand what's actually happening. But the long-term strategies is still about education and learning. Last year, we worked with a bad news game. So the game developed by Cambridge University and another company in Netherlands. And basically this game, just in 15 minutes, we have it also in Lithuanian language, so you can scan the barcode and test the game there. So in 15 minutes, the Cambridge research showed that just playing the game for 15 minutes, it makes people 20% more resilient to disinformation. So last year, this game was played in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, by 116,000 people, 163,000 times. So that is probably one of the biggest media literacy campaigns the Baltics ever had, and we received the same result, a 22% increase in resilience. This year, we are focusing heavily, further working with young people and educating them on how disinformation stories are created, how to understand Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, how the algorithms work, why you see what you see, how to recognize the fake accounts, how to identify the troll accounts, and basically how to live more securely in the current digital space. And academic research has showed that Generation Z is quite vulnerable to disinformation because they feel kind of digital natives, but actually when measuring the knowledge, there's a lot, still some gaps that need to be filled in. So anyone who wants to try out this course, you can scan the barcode as well, and all the participants who participate will even receive a blockchain-based certificate that is also nicely designed, and it's impossible to manufacture it or to create a copy. We are a community-based organization, and everything we do, it is hard, it is not easy, and if there are people who are interested or want to contribute on AI, on machine learning, or to run internships or to have great ideas and want to test them, you're always welcome to contact us, and then we can talk. And also, we want to help more with the trainings, and we're running international disinformation resilience trainings for the students now in Lithuania, and any students from Lithuania or can apply and participate. So this will be a live event next week. So there's still time to register. If you have ideas or questions, please contact us, and we can talk there. And last but not least, so last year we had quite a lot of cyber attacks, and it was quite difficult to, when you are debunking disinformation and presenting the results, then there's a lot of actors who kind of don't like this, and then you receive cyber attacks, and the infrastructure might be broken. So now we improved that, so now it's much stronger and better, and you can find the latest analysis and everything we do on our debunku.org website. So I will stop here, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Viktoras. Thank you so much for explaining on what is actually happening in our world. And I have two questions that would love to explore with you. Let's start with the first one. Let's be honest, we could have predicted that with COVID, we will get into another war that is called fake news and disinformation war, right? So why haven't the countries actually get ready for that, and why didn't we deploy any tools to actually fight it?
That's a very good question, and probably the same thing would be with actual pandemic. Why haven't the countries? Why the countries didn't prepare for it?
Well, they do have procedures, algorithms there in place.
1.5
waiting.
years. Yes, that was not the case in Europe. No one knew how to wear a mask, or why should you wear it everywhere you go. So that is a new thing. With disinformation and influence operations, some countries like Lithuania, they're leading in the world, and there's a good example. So we have a lot of experience, not by our own will as a country, to counter Kremlin disinformation. And so preparing for the crisis is a really difficult thing, because how can you prepare for something that you don't know? How you prepare for some unknowns? So I would say that Lithuania is still quite well prepared comparing to other countries, and other countries in the EU even haven't agreed that disinformation is an actual problem. And so in Lithuania, we have quite well agreement that this is a problem and we need to work on it. What is probably the most troubling thing is that kind of in the international community, everyone tends to agree that this is a problem. But when getting to the question, how do you fund this? How do you make it sustainable? Then you have a kind of difficult talk, because everyone kind of agrees that the problem is there, but who actually would need to pay for it? When the disinformation actors are creating and they are investing huge money in that and also making profits. So in some cases, disinformation is actually profitable.
Yeah, I read it somewhere. If you want to actually earn a lot of money, make people afraid, right? And then they do the stuff you ask them to do. But why did I address to this issue? Because in the past, in the Western countries, we always had the same problem with vaccination. We always have the same issues with 3G, 4G, 5G. All the narratives are the same. So why haven't we solved it yet? And maybe I can shift the question to the other side. In your company, you do have a lot of patterns that you can predict that it's going to be a very good topic for misinformation. Maybe let's prepare for it. Or no one cares?
Yeah, actually, you're correct. A lot of things that were debunked before. The conspiracy theories, a lot of them not new. Vaccination question, not new. So we see that this was happening already 15 years.
That's why I'm saying with COVID-19, nothing is new.
Yeah.
Just the name is different.
What is actually new with COVID is the scale of it.
Okay.
We never experienced that large scale of disinformation and conspiracy theories. And they need to analyze the actors who are actually creating the content, who are amplifying the content, and how social media is actually impacting this. And then we end up in a really weird situations when big tech companies would say that you would have a group with, I don't know, 50,000, 100,000 million users in that group. And then the group privacy settings would be changed, and it would be called a private group. And that would mean that this is a private conversation. So would you consider that talking outside to be with 1,000 people, and that would be a private conversation? So that's one question. So there's a lot of problems with the transparency. So we don't see information how these social media accounts earn money or how much they earn. Whom do they belong? The same with the website. So there is a lack of transparency, and then the bad actors can actually exploit that and use that to their advantage. And we actually saw that this is a big topic. A lot of people were really, really scared. And when people are scared, it's the time when they're the most vulnerable. And some actors actually exploited that. So the world was not prepared to the scale of this and how social media can actually hugely amplify that. And social media is quite easily manipulatable. We saw that during the COVID times. And therefore, EU is running with the new policies. It's sad that it's a bit slow, so we require a much faster reaction on that. And now we have the real evidence that disinformation in the context of COVID can actually kill people.
Yes, and you brought us to my second topic. COVID-19 is not the only topic. Before that we had, for example, elections and many other issues that societies face. But there's one thing that connects them all: social networks or big tech companies that are actually deployed some algorithms that help the harmful information to be spread. So at this point, if we do understand where's the root of the problem, so should we blame the companies about it, or how can we fix it? At this point, it's not a problem for Facebook to close down the group that has 1 million people just looking at how harmful it is.
So it is a kind of...
I know it's a censorship topic, but what's your point
you
on
cannot close down that simply, but
why?
You would the more interesting thing is how, for example, Facebook operates. There is 9 billion profit in one quarter, just one quarter, 9 billion profit. 80 or 90% of all content moderation is directed to English language. All the smaller languages have almost no content moderation, so there are no human reviewers who check all the problems and then think what to do with that. If the content is brought down in the Facebook, there is no possibility to access and review was that made a good thing or was that a bad thing.
Who can make a decision, right?
So there is no transparency. And even there is no possibility for independent companies to audit big tech. Do they actually do what they say they do? And with the recent leaks, with 11,000 pages of the documents, we now can see that a lot of things that we were kind of having the strings, seeing that this is actual problem, it's not being solved, those documents actually prove that. And probably that's the time when these companies need to take responsibility and take some burden of regulation. And
someone needs to get hurt, right?
Huh?
Someone needs to get hurt.
Probably that's the worst thing. That before it's hard in the society to take actions before the bad things happen. So never waste a good crisis and do the changes and be better the next one.
Okay, for us not to finish with this, the negative emotions here on the stage of AI Boost 2021, Viktoras, what do you think? Will it get better in the future?
It is getting better every day. Our Lithuanian economy, compared 20 years ago, how we lived and how we live now. So it's getting better. Just the challenges are also bigger. So we should not expect that the future will bring lesser challenges, because then life might become boring. So let's keep entertained and be prepared to manage the crisis. So the good and the bad. That's the call for life.
Amazing. Let's keep entertained, and I strongly advise everyone to try the game that Viktoras was showing on the screen. Hopefully the organizers will be able to share the links to the game. So thank you so much, Viktoras, for your keynote presentation. Thank you so much for the insights. Hopefully there are people that understood a bit more about how the disinformation works, and good luck with what you do. It's a very big mission you carry there. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Viktoras Dauksas, head of debunkeu.org initiative. Let's move on to our next presentation.